The profound Prajnaparamita saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Dressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisattva. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita, just as you have taught. Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Jube nejo damba ne nguje du chu ngai du do jin drupa bola moi bushinzi ne sum kandro sola jazelo Jandara Samarayam Teyata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha Papa Gunjisam Jigai Dembe Doji Shiva Doji Jagi Bachi Metin Bijutanji Jedin Goi Soha Gerin Tonja Jeju Shewa Dam Mitu Nube Jendan Jawa Tumba Dunjin Punsum Tsujoji Yaji De Yan Dendan De Lejo. The fundamental ground is with incense and strewn flowers. adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient living beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Nye zun lama namba nye na nye nyu ngu nga la nye zi nyun zin zui nye da zambe nu nye zin ma la za nye ju ji jaba am nu zu. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niratayami.
Sanje Judan Tsoji
Janama Yanju Badu Dani Yasuji Dagi Chinye Jipe Sananji Drola Benje Sanje Jubajo Jadan Zaji Janama Janju Badu Dani Yasuji Dagi Chinye Jipe Sananji Jalan Benjia Sanje Jubajo Jadan Zaji Jadan La Janju Badu Dani Suji Dagi Chinye Jipe Sananji Jalan Benjia Sanje Jubajo
Namo Laye Gadan Lodani Yagi Rumontana Meye Gadan Dua Kunji Dana Jasam Tajegado Dagi Judu Why Tangazo London what the Tasha Lanji drama, George Atisha, the London or the Nazo to see the Varis, Marba, and the London to see the cage over is, and Sanjig and Dodan Ha, teaching Tim and Mobish from Varis. Samalo the Sanji 운동하 두는 제바드는 자격 개발된 나가줘나도 상갈로 소리 두석에 제보만 보여와르스 두석은 갈로 차상화대 아니 아디샤게 챙겨와르스 아디샤가 런던 어디 참았던 되려와르스 어디 가서 런던 두세도와르스 말아.
So we've been going over the text by the great master, the Lord Atisha, called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And this is a very important text. This text contains all of the meanings of the Dharma that is contained in both Sutra and Tantra. And we can also find various commentaries by great masters such as Asanga and Nagarjuna, and all of the meanings of these great works and all of the contents of the sutric texts and the tantric texts can be found in this condensed format called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So Atisha wrote this text, which is a text on the stages of the path, and this text was written in order to purify or cleanse any of the wrong ideas that had crept into the Buddha Dharma at that time. Any wrong ideas that had saturated the Dharma were to be dispelled by the composition of this great text by the Lord Atisha, The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment.
어제는 아디샤드네 별 배루지에서는 벼바속에 별 배루지 주버레스 안내 아디샤 도바사고 와서 나 별은 로와 있나 팬도를 자용고 아유미요 안내 공 안내 저든 점에 뒤다도 공을 시에지도 와르스 저든 점마다 아디샤 기행 거주나무레스 안내 아디샤는 점을 주버레스 안내 벼바주에는 나 별은 용으로지 된데서도 안내 나 별은 로나 팬도 용거래 말해 네 드라마를 주어res 자갈되는 팬도 책을 별로는 팬도 책을 주디 안에 드라마 주로 별 배바이나 뱀메시 팬도 책도스 이네 쳇통도스 자갈 주바이나 쳇림버레스 팬도 인즈마도 용사마레스 어드송레스.
So the great master Atisha was invited by the Tibetans to come to give teachings in Tibet. And Atisha was unclear. He had some doubts as to whether or not he should do this. So he went to consult Tara, and he and Tara had a teacher-student relationship. They had a very close connection. So he went to consult with Tara to find out if it would be helpful, if it would be beneficial, if he left India and went to Tibet. And Atisha was given this response by Tara. She stated that you will be of great benefit if you go to Tibet and are able to give the teachings, but your life will be shortened if you do go. But there isn't even a medium level of comparative benefit if you are to stay in India and compose. So this is the advice that was given to Atisha by Tara, stating that if he went to Tibet, there would be the greatest benefit, but his life would be shortened.
어제 다 조지 별회는 되는 어디 상주 란드 장나 버스 쇼군요 뉴질이요 말스 듄디 진네 쇼구 듄 아유 어디는지 마도요 말스 대나로래 도당하 티진 팀에 용주도 된다데 대나도셔요 말스.
So then Atisha did go to Tibet and composed this very pure text called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And it's a very condensed format because it's probably not even 7 leaflets or 7 pages, but it contains all of the vast meaning of Sutra and Tantra in an abbreviated fashion within it. So this is a very special text.
어제 다드네 거기 듣는 라운드에 듣는 벤도당 하가 두두지네 안에 제자바여 손자 안에 라운드에 제마 자갈 셀레운디 자갈 개바나 자갈 말레 밤지 벤도 주중 거레스.
So because this very abbreviated text contained all of the meanings of both Sutra and Tantra, when this text arrived in India, it was actually quite helpful for Indians as well and the great masters that were residing there as well.
어제 다른 란드게 센다면 손요가 제단 산지게 추추들에 안 뒤샤바이나 안 된세 손도네 그랬어. 되네 땅 아주 되네 가서 그래. 내손 동에 내손 제바이나 안 가서 쓰이나야 가보요 말이스. 내손 동에요 말이스. 동에 요서 안 가서 그 동에 먼저 봐서 내손 제알 되고요 말이스. 던돌 하다 말 제바이나 가보요 말이스. 안내 내손 동에 가네 던돌 하다 말 로야게 안내 가서 랑그레 봐서나 뭐도 어때 제부 중어도 도모이 나지지 마셔야 돼. 어떨래도 말이스.
So if we look at all of the teachings that Buddha gave, all of the different kinds of teachings, we can break them down into 3 distinct categories. We can put all of these teachings into 3 different categories. In the first level, which is called the stages of the path, which are shared in common with beings of a small capacity, is as follows. If a being recognizes that he or she does not wish to have to endure the suffering of the 3 lower realms, if there is a recognition that he or she wishes to be born into the higher realms of the gods and humans and abandon the rebirth into the lower realms. So the teachings shared in common for beings of small capacity are the stages of the path which enable one to be able to eradicate rebirth into the lower realms and achieve a rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and humans and so forth.
어제 다드네 집 중요 라지리바 중고다 토모이 라지리바 거서 안내 계속 동에 까네 던들 하던을 로야게 안내 랑스네인데 가르쳐 그래 타고 주 가르쳐 와르스나 안내 건조송라 저선류 거네 건조송라 저선류 거네 되네 렌데 야부송서 그러다 레단 추팅송서 말바 뭐가 좀 추팅 렌데송 되는 게도송 마도가 있네 샤당 아버지 거레스 어두스 제바 있는 가송을 지금 말해 안내 하던을 전에 그래서 어 상지 어두송 버드송 샤바데 안내 란던 두자르스.
So the condensed meaning of this scope, the teachings share in common with beings of small capacity, is the recognition of the desire. The Yanjur Suralang, please. Yanjur Suralang, Rinpoche.
다드네 집 중요 라지리바 가르송 와르서 다 간데 햄바던다이 상주 건조라 저선로야 안내 최도 햄단다이 최건조 안내 가르쳐 그래 다 간데 너르선스고 말베 건조송라
Yine ngamagari something.
다 간데 ngaso 동에 까네 던들 로야게 다시 가르치고
Tapshe 가르치. Okay, less.
주가도 그러잖아. 아니 건조송라 저선 로요고네 상지 그 송샤비 네 추딩 가도 줘도 송 되네 송마도 바이나 데발 샤당 아버지나 되네 들을 저그레스.
So if one wishes to be able to abandon rebirth into the lower realms, what is the method that is contained within these teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity? The method is that one has to have a very stable foundation in refuge. And refuge in the three jewels. And something Rinpoche added was that one sees the three jewels as being like a doctor, medicine, and a nurse, seeing the Buddha as a doctor, seeing the Dharma as medicine and prescribed medicine, and seeing the Sangha as helpful aids or nurses. So one must have a stable foundation in going for refuge to these three jewels, as well as an understanding of the law of cause and effect and restraint or ethical behavior. And if one does fall from his or her ethical behavior, then it's necessary to have an acknowledgement of one's downfalls or utilize the confession limb. So confession or acknowledgement of downfalls coupled with the understanding of the law of cause and effect and modifying one's behavior and then going for refuge will allow one to eradicate the potential for rebirth, or eradicate rebirth into the lower realms and allow one to achieve rebirth into the higher realms of the gods and humans.
다 가르스나 가서 최나 디바세야 등 가서 르가 예수로만 진산다요 말스 르가 이 르지 디바 나기 디바 이지 디바 송요와르스 르지 거와 나기 거와 예지 거와 어떠소마도 대진 대면 건가로 소드시야요 말스 르가 예수 돈시야르스.
So if we look at the teachings of Hinayana or Mahayana or any of the teachings of the Buddha, we will see that, let's go, the teachings of the Buddha. We will see that the great ways in which one accumulates virtue or non-virtue are three: the body, the speech, and the mind. So one can accumulate virtue through the body, virtue through the speech, and virtue through the mind. And one can accumulate non-virtue or accumulate misdeeds through the body, the speech, and the mind. There isn't another way in which one accumulates virtue or non-virtue. And this can be found both in the Hinayana and Mahayana teachings.
어제 답변한 가서 뢰지고네 뢰지래 나봐서 뢰지고네 소저발아서 대바소 나기 이제 예지송데 대바 먹어 줘서 그랬어. 근데 뢰지 아는 가서 뢰지래 아는 가서 뭐지 세워이나 뭐그 소저는 가서 롱라는데 롱라는 뭐지 세워이나 되네 담보드세 자둘래 단디 소냐베 제소이나 제바이나 아니 용은 조송 상와 뭐 용은 조송상에 대바 인상 대바 지슈레스 말이야 다데 세 자둘 양 조바 제바이나 대바 딘레스 아니 송거나는 니마도마 지마도마상은 총어들레스 용은 조송상에 대바되게 레버들레 녀와 용거레스 딘데게 다 용거레스 총어들 돈을 제는 거레스 말이야
Mgewa ju tamche lagwa. Okay. So when we look at virtue or non-virtue that one can engage in, and we look at non-virtue, there are 10 non-virtues. There are the 3 non-virtues of the body, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The 4 non-virtues of the speech, and the 3 non-virtues of the mind. So these are the doorways in which one can create virtue or non-virtue. So when we look at non-virtue, there are 3 levels, or 3 levels of intensity relative to effect in which if one engages in a non-virtue. For instance, if we look at killing, a non-virtue of the body, if one, for instance, has the motivation to kill a bug, sees a bug, recognizes that it's a bug, and then has an afflicted motivation to kill a bug, and then actually engages, the second thing is actually engages in the act of killing a bug, and then thirdly, rejoices in having killed that bug. If all of these 3 things are present, then this is called the greatest level of non-virtue, or a great level of non-virtue relative to the non-virtue of killing. So if these 3 things are present, this is a great level of non-virtue, and a great level of non-virtue produces a rebirth into the hell realms. Now, if only 2 of those factors are present, then this creates a rebirth into the hungry ghost realm. And if only 1 of those factors is present, then this creates a rebirth into the animal realm. So the great level of non-virtue produces hell realm rebirth, medium level produces hungry ghost realm rebirth, and the small level produces an animal realm rebirth. So this is how actions relate to their intensity, and the 3 factors necessary to be present for a great misdeed to be created.
다양 아좀 버세더 제도나 버드 마세바 제랑상 버드 마세바 봄비 추딘 송바이나 오 당한 버 마세비 추딘 송바드 시다고 야부 좀 제소여나 제바이나 용원 조송상 거와 치슈레스 디인데블 할진도 거레스 니 마상 마잖아 안 데미가를 좀 지마도 마상 멀진도 거레스 말베.
So if we look at that same act of actually killing a bug, and we look at it, engage in it differently, if one is to notice the object of the bug, and then because of ethical restraint, abstain from killing the bug, and first having the motivation, recognizing that it is a bug, and having the motivation not to kill, then the actual abstention or abstaining from the killing takes place, and then rejoicing takes place, then this is the greatest level of virtue. So the greatest level of virtue produces rebirth into the God's realm. And then, as stated before, similarly, the medium level of virtue is created by having only 2 of those factors present, and a small level of virtue is created by having 1 of those factors present. If a medium level of virtue is created, that produces rebirth into the demigod's realm, and a small level of rebirth creates or produces rebirth into the human realm. So the great level produces God realm rebirth, medium level produces demigod realm rebirth, and a small degree produces human rebirth. So this is how virtue relates to its intensity.
어떻다비 내주도 상지 챙고와르스 상지 내주 챙네 안종수 동에 먼저바 인소서 어때서서 제고와르스 더와당 하당 메이고 본더바이나 안 주리송아 계셔버리스 대송바이나 하당 멀지그리 지비용거리스 상지고 어두송거리스
So the all-knowing Buddha is the one who understands this. The Buddha is all-knowing, so he has the ability to understand that if one engages in ethical behavior, then this will lead to rebirth into the humans and God's realm. So if one wishes to have that type of rebirth, then it is necessary for him or her to engage in ethical behavior. So the Buddha is an all-knowing being, so he has the ability to understand this.
So
if we look at the 10 non-virtues, and we look at the 10 virtues, and we can apply the same formula to all of them. They're similar. But if one has engaged in some sort of misdeed or negative behavior, then it's not necessary to become very depressed, because it is stated by the Buddha that it's possible to purify these negativities that we engage in. It's possible through acknowledgement of downfalls to purify these negativities. So, and then there's many stories, and a story of a being called Angumala. The Angumala accumulated a large amount of non-virtue relative to killing, and he did not have to experience these. Through acknowledgement of downfalls and practice, he was able to achieve the state of foe destroyer in that lifetime. So we can see in this story an example of one who has been able to purify his downfalls.
So even if
we achieve this rebirth, though, in the gods or humans, we can see in our case right now in the human realm that we have suffering. We have to endure various types of suffering: the suffering of birth, the suffering of aging, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of death, the suffering of meeting with the unpleasant, and the suffering of the suffering of change and pervasive compounded suffering. We have to endure all of these types of suffering, even in this human realm in which we can witness it for ourselves.
어제 다 가데 동에도서 그걸로 죽걸로 되는 중앙에서 군중 된바 레더 녀모 군중로 되는 중앙에서 때 걸로 되는 중앙에서나 덴젤 되는 중앙에서 대답이 되네 동에 주던 집에 pom발라 아니 제분딘도 도모이 라지를 하비 주딘지 라바다 딩가지 라바다 싫어지 라바송 제분딘 거송어레스.
So then if this recognition takes place, then one must look for the actual causal factor of this suffering, and then one will arrive at the origin of suffering. And then when one looks for the origin of suffering, then one will see that it is the karma and afflictions which causes the suffering. But if one traces a little further to the causes of the karma and afflictions, one will see that it is the grasping at true existence that is the actual causal factor, the driving force, and the abandonment of this grasping at true establishment or grasping at true existence is what allows one to abandon the actual origin.
어제 다 디바 동에 가서 그래 동에 다 녀모 받아서 그거 본발라 안에 돈이 도 싫어 돈이 도 싫어 돈이라 매빌 하동 거 그래서 싫어 거 그래서 된 돈이라 매비 신내 거 그래서 추진 거 그래서 도송 상선나 안에 동에 다녀 뭐 받는 뭐네 다좀 보고 보는 도 그래서 제번 링 거서 어디서
Lesser. And I forgot to translate one section. And so if one then recognizes that there are these various types of suffering, even in the humans and God's realm, then he or she wishes to definitely get out of that cyclic existence altogether, then he or she has arrived at the medium scope or teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. And the method one must engage in order to achieve the freedom from cyclic existence is to engage in the three highest higher trainings. The higher training in ethics, the higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. So it's necessary to have wisdom which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, the nature of reality, and a single-pointed concentration whose object of observation is emptiness. In order to achieve the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this can be achieved through the understanding of the lack of true establishment. So these three higher trainings must be practiced. The wisdom, the higher training in wisdom, whose object of observation is emptiness, the concentration, single-pointed concentration, whose object of observation is emptiness, and then that combined with the ethics allows one to achieve the status beyond cyclic existence.
다 댄진 시간에 타바 드르든지 빌로나고 로로시레스 타바 드르 많이 바시빌로 돈이도 싫어한다 그래서 타바 드르 많이 바시스나 타바 드르든지 롤네네 아니 집어도 그런도 왔어 돈이 셰스나 저는 대바 두바지 댄질 네는 그래서 디인데고 녀모보다 동해 건 동해를 네는 갈래갈래 또 본 타발로 하지 사res.
So the mistaken view that recognizes things as truly established is very similar to a mistaken view that one might have if he or she enters a room and mistakes a rope for a snake. That actual mistaken view causes fear, but the eradication of the mistaken view through knowledge of the rope being a rope dispels the fear. Likewise, the suffering which is created by the grasping at true establishment can be abandoned through the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is a non-mistaken view. The grasping at true establishment being a mistaken view in the same way that the rope being a snake is a mistaken view. And once one no longer has the mistaken view, then one is able to have the wisdom realizing emptiness that allows he or she then to achieve liberation.
어제 다들 돈이도 비셔다 띵에제다 어제 저리서 존나 안 타발로 두고 그래서 팀에 가서 아니 어디서라 되네 답이고 두고 그래데 이나야 댄싱 바자도 너무 바자 시리 본 두고 말이야 시리 마본 손다 안 사제 두고 말이야 사제 구분 두발라 아니 돈이도 비셔다 상주 센도 그냥도 냥래 제고 그래서 상주 센로 장 그래서.
So what we've spoken up to now is the actual Hinayana view, because if one only has the wisdom and the concentration, the single-pointed concentration, then it is not possible to achieve the state of Buddhahood. The reason being that the afflictive obstructions can be eradicated through this lesser vehicle in the medium scope. But the obstructions to omniscience, the imprints to the afflictive obstructions, cannot be eradicated by this wisdom alone. It's necessary to combine the wisdom, combine this wisdom with the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Combine this with bodhicitta. So if one has the combination of bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness, then method and wisdom are present and it is possible to achieve the state of Buddhahood. But without the abandonment of or eradication of the obstructions to omniscience which are left from the afflictive obstructions, without the eradication of those, the state of all-knowing cannot be achieved.
와제 다상주 생당 돈이도 비셔러 냥도 냥소 렌스는 안 대바 첨보 인사르와 대바 첨보지 다 대바 첨보 상주 생줄 제 자들에 네 다논 가지고래 추진당 딩에제도 셔러질러봐 시스프로바션 어두술 하고 그래서 말이야 더술 말나 상주상 장바가 상제 두고 말이스.
So this, when one has this wisdom combined with the mind that aspires to enlightenment or bodhicitta, then this becomes the great vehicle path, the Mahayana path. And once one generates this mind that aspires to enlightenment, then he or she can engage in the practice of the six perfections, the perfection of ethics, perfection of generosity, etc. So one, after achieving the state of bodhicitta, and then one can engage in the six perfections.
어제 다드는 가서 다 싫어 하동 가도 해도요. 싫어와. 싫어 하동 가도 해도요. 란드 대 안가니 된 마로에 아자지 신잖아.
Okay, so we
안가 나중 가서 말해.
Okay. Number 53 in the Tibetan and the English. I just want to make sure that everything's matching up. I believe it is. 53.
대유주나 말루베 라진다는 매매베 다음에 반 공간이 되는 싫어 공간이스. 어디가 하동이 싫어 하동이 싫어 생각되는 자고 그래서 제단 하동이 싫어 뭐래 돼. 단나데 건데 돈이 두고 하동이 싫어 자고 그래서 말해. 어디 고절 알레인시 차지로네.
Okay, then
대유주나 말루베 라진다는 매매베 다음에 반 공간이 되는 싫어 공 하동이 싫어 공 봤는데 최단지 대마마로 보고 거래서 댄데 인서 대마마로 거래서 대인서 어때다비 돈이라 매비 하동 돈이라 매비 하동 단단데 주 돈이라 매비 하동 자고 그래서 어때서 거래서 제단 하동 뭐 보여 그래서 단단데 시대야데 주 돈이라 매비 하동 지고 그래서 제단 하동 뭐 보여 하동 셔바다 나바 건갈요 그래서 나바 잡아 말해서.
Okay, so number 53 says, thus, whatever is meditation on selflessness and that does not observe an inherent nature of phenomena is the cultivation of wisdom. So here we've arrived at the section of special insight. So the special insight is the special insight which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness. So the cultivation of wisdom is a familiarization with, in the Tibetan it says gom, which is familiarization or also meditation. So familiarization with wisdom and the special insight which is directed at the emptiness is what the wisdom here that is being spoken of. There are many kinds of special insight. This is not an exclusive thing to the Buddhist tradition, but the special insight that's being spoken of here is familiarization with concepts such as the things are not truly established because they dependently originate. So formulas such as these are the cultivation of wisdom. So the wisdom realizing emptiness is achieved through single-pointed, through special insight. So the special insight is a realization, a special insight is a realization of emptiness. So this special insight is a realization of emptiness. So here in number 53, when it's speaking of cultivation of wisdom, this is the wisdom that's being spoken of.
다 뉴제단 되마시 추 간대진이나 그걸로 땡데레스 다주 초종을 되는 주바레스 되는 주바 땡데 인장 안 대바마 주바레스 대답이 대바마 주바 공비 싫어들 돈이라미비 하동 싫어서도 와든지 샤고레스.
So, whether it is compound or uncompounded phenomena, it is necessarily dependently originated, and it is necessarily not truly established. If it is compound or non-compound, we can say that it dependently originates. If it dependently originates, it is necessarily not truly established. This emptiness, this realization of emptiness is brought about through the special insight which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness.
어제 다티 오마되게 나중가지로 싫어지는 취나 강경하지 마통시 싫어더니 레제바 나도 매버 대공샤스 다 돈이도 비 싫어 그러냐 대바 조마조 산당수나 돈이도 비 싫어 그러냐 땡데제 돈이도 비 싫어 그러냐 대바마로 버스 어때 되는 거스 말봐.
Just as wisdom does not see an inherent nature in phenomena, having analyzed wisdom itself by reasoning, non-conceptually meditate on that. So here we've arrived at a Madhyamika. Rinpoche said before he read it, Madhyamika section. So here the analysis is of the actual wisdom realizing emptiness. Is the wisdom realizing emptiness itself truly established? And the answer is no, because the wisdom realizing emptiness is dependent. It dependently originates, and because it dependently originates, it is necessarily not truly established. So here, this is the meaning of number 54. It's the analysis of the wisdom realizing emptiness and the recognition of its lack of true establishment.
다 돈이도 비셔러 돈이라미빌 하동 가르진 공고라서 가르진 돈이라미빌 하동 공도 그래서나 안나 주나 대바 주반제비 댄진라 댄네 코알코도 동해 용고라서 안에 주나 대메도비 하동도 공바이나 안에 댄진다 녀모바도 동해도 갈래갈len가 안에 타바 도바 용거레스 어디 송도 그래서 말베
Niepo gare denzin danyomo niepo doni bishera
denzin 들어와 대만 제발라 때네 아니 녀모제 레사는 코알로 그 동네 요거레스 저나 대메도비 하동도 야도 공바이나 아니 동해 그 denzin 넣는다 그래서 antidote 녀모게 antidote 동해 antidote 갈래 간 타바도 용거래 편해 쳐버레스.
So the special insight whose object of observation is emptiness is of great benefit. Because it is the grasping at true establishment which creates action and afflictions, which creates cyclic existence. So cyclic existence is created by this, but if one has the understanding, realization of the selflessness of phenomena, the lack of true establishment of phenomena because of its dependent origination, then one is able to eradicate the causal factors for cyclic existence, are able to, the actual wisdom realizing emptiness, or the special insight, serves as an antidote to the mistaken view of grasping at true establishment, and will slowly be able to eradicate this grasping at true establishment.
다 동해도서 그걸로 근중을 되는 거 근중대 댄진을 되는 정도 요아레스 말이야. 댄진을 되는 정 동해 대바도 근중 대바니 되는 것도
맞아.
다 돈이 대메도비 랑그 대바도 고나 되네 동해 pombi ngoden yungor taba yungor dembaji le dengdo was dembaji marbe podem tru
la goden down landen like goden down landen
동해 근가로 죽간을 되는 저 근중을 되는 정도 was 근중을 타돈 댄진 정도 was
라서
동해 대바도 근중 대바로 와
라서
다 대메도 비셔 랑도 고나
라서
되네 라데서 그러바 안에 더 공바이나 So
if we look at this relative to the Four Noble Truths, we see that grasping at true establishment is what causes suffering. This is one from before. Grasping at true establishment is what causes suffering. So when we look at it relative to the Four Noble Truths, we'll see that the first noble truth is the truth of suffering, and the second noble truth is the truth of origin. Here we can see that the grasping at true establishment is the truth of origin. So if one then cultivates the wisdom which recognizes the selflessness of phenomena, if one can cultivate this, then one achieves this cultivation allows one to achieve lamden, or truth of path, which is the fourth noble truth. And the truth of cessation is achieved through the practice of this and through the understanding of the nature of reality, or the understanding of the emptiness. So if one has this wisdom recognizing the selflessness of phenomena, then one achieves path and then can achieve cessation.
And then the la junior Santana was Chuna de Batuans with Tenzin, Quiz, Zawashibala Tene, and then the la junior on call Kuduaris. Don't you do Demet to be Laton Gombaina, then the la junior and Garne, then the la junior Bombi Taba junior Youngres, what then the Jan was?
So we can also look at it as this grasping at true establishment is what motivates or causes the 12 links of dependent origination to take place. And one can then take these 12 links of dependent origination and achieve the special insight which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, and can undo and create the 12 links of liberation. So one can reverse those links and make them the 12 links of liberation. Yenla Junyi, Tarpa Yenla Junyi. Tarpi Yenla Junyi.
Then the La Juni, then the La Juni Dunga,
Dunya, the suffering, yeah.
then the La Juni Bombi Goden Juni Younger.
So yes, they're the 12 suffering links are then converted into the 12 cessation links. So this conversion takes place.
Then the Ludu Lunjung Janet was.
So the Dendel and Loju.
Then the Lunjung Juni the Kuy Dendel.
Lesser.
Ludu Juni, don't you go by Yena, Toma Mariva Pong, Goden Youngres. Even to Lepong Goden Youngres, Juni Pong Goden Juni Youngres. Ludus.
So when one has this, this takes place, this switch, one has this ignorance, which is the first of the 12 links of dependent origination. This acts as an opponent and eradicates that. So this becomes this first link becomes the first link of cessation link, and the second link of action, and so forth, ceases to be a suffering link and becomes a cessation link. So these 12 links are converted from suffering links to cessation links.
Oje ta toni la mi bi toni la mi ne karasugure toni la mi me hatung gomba ina dene donge bombi tabatu ba yungores marbe and things so payment we are is what is one thing inside.
So if one is able to have this special insight whose object of observation is emptiness, then one is able to eventually achieve the state of liberation or nirvana.
Tadane chuna deba maruba to be hatung gongoba ina and chuna deba maruba de sanje gaba songjayo do go songyore han go song gaba songyore and sanje ge do go so and chuna deba maruba mombo songbora ha sutra nalul danga se deme songdoa de najim bom nieche je tomba what to go so le chuna deba maruba songyore marbe.
So if we ask the question, we hear this talk of the things are not truly established. They're not inherently established. Where can this be found? Can this be found? Is this sutra or tantra? Where is this idea found? And one can find this idea in many different places. One can, in the 100,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, find these same examples. The 24,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the 8,000 verse Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. All of these sutras just mentioned contain the idea, or they propound the lack of true establishment of phenomena. And we can even see in the Heart Sutra that we read the idea in a condensed format or abbreviated format, the lack of true establishment being propounded in that particular text as well.
다 싫어니고 나 부모가부터 달라 라지지 도만나와야 다바 주스 타오 미메 나 메송야데 근데 미요 말에 부모가 요 말로고 말레스 미도 부모가로 덴바 텐데레 덴바 마루 바레 덴바 두바 요 말에 어디 손도 거레스.
So when we look at the Heart Sutra, it says, seeing the five skandhas to be, hold on one second, I'll give you the exact quote. Here it speaks of seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. I guess I was right. So it stating that seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature, and then Rinpoche said, it says, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, etc. It states all of these things, and here the meaning of this is that the eye and the ear and so forth dependently originate. So because they dependently originate, they are not truly established. So the no, or the negative in this case, refers to the lack of true establishment, or the absence of true establishment. Here this is what's referred to in the Heart Sutra implicitly by these statements by the Buddha.
어제 드는 사제게 드는 두이 고서 맞은 하가 나올 때는 추나 대바마로 송해로 와르스 하가 나올에 주된데게 대바마 주디제 샤유주 쉐비주 nenjuju nenjulana메비 주 타지가 나올래 돈이 마송바 요 마르스 아니 돈이 타지 나올 돈이 송요 와르스 말베.
So when we look at the tantric vehicle, we'll also see the idea that phenomena are not truly established, and it doesn't matter which vehicle we look in. We'll find it in all four classes of Tantra. We'll find this in the action Tantra, in the performance Tantra, in the yogic Tantra, and the highest yogic Tantra. So in all four classes of Tantra, we will find the idea of the lack of true establishment of phenomena, or the idea of emptiness. So this emptiness is found throughout all of Buddhist teachings.
Demba maruba sumba insonta an chena demba maruba is long druba repeat druba long druba tende invasion na ribak druba sanji ge sondu she sombe she na long druba long druji long coverwa sanji ge sumba inza demba maruba is do go so demba maruba sumba re ha go so demba maruba sumba re de insonta demba maruba is the time the mazive chena tende is tende inza demba maruba riba ta andala tende and toni druba maruba ni sondo.
So there are two ways in which we can look at this: dependence upon scripture and dependence upon logic. One can use the various quotations that can be found in both Sutra and Tantra to have the basis of this emptiness, or the lack of true establishment of phenomena. But one can also utilize logic and utilize a syllogism, I believe they're called, they're a consequence. One can utilize this by stating phenomena are not truly established because they dependently originate. So here we're utilizing a correct sign to prove our thesis about the subject we stated it about. So here we're relying upon logic, and in the previous case we were relying upon quotation or faith in the scripture. So here there are two ways in which we can come to this conclusion.
ngaju ten ma wat de sanje ki ha ko so le ne de me son bare son din sare de da yan jo den ji ta ji le mun do wat de na do mari chen bo de na do mari chen bo do wa 나도 말이 쳔보데 나주 나도 말베 나주 나도
Lama
알레르베 나주 나가래 나도 레션 시반데 나바 두비 다니데 대시 말로 또 본바 냥에 데바 주이노 어떻게 많이 쳔바마 어디 찌러다 나제 찌루슈도데
So number 55 says the nature of this worldly existence, which has come from conceptualization, is conceptuality. Thus, the elimination of conceptuality is the highest state of nirvana.
다들 주나 대바 마주바 두비 하동 가르치는 공부에서나 주나 대바 주면 내지 나도 조셔발라 되네 코알로 코도 그래서 주나 대면도 주나 대바 마주바 두비 하동 공부이나 대바 주반지 나도 가네 아니 타발로 그래 편해져 보여 그래서 어디 정도로 말이야 나도 레션 시반 나바두비 다니데 대셔 말로 두봉바 양한 대바 조이노스 타바도 편해져 보여 그래서
So if one is able to have a non-conceptual understanding and recognize that phenomena are not truly established, then this has the ability to create nirvana or the liberation. Because the grasping at true establishment, this conceptual grasping at true establishment creates cyclic existence and suffering and so forth, whereas the recognition of the lack of true establishment of phenomena, non-conceptual realization of the lack of true establishment of phenomena allows one to achieve the highest state of nirvana or liberation. So that's the meaning of 55.
다 비디 시스말 보데 나도 말이 전부터 쿠이자수 동화시 도면 딘진라네 바 나가진도 도면세 당춘들라 자유세 나바모도 상주나 나도 저가난데데 린지모도 도반주르스 어데 사지기 하그 논이 된사레 하게 안에 가서 나도 말이 전부터 쿠이자수 동화시 하고 송시 실가니데 안에 전화 대바마 줘버리스 사지기 하고서 안 전화 대바마 줘버 송도스 안에 나도 말이 전부터 쿠이자수 동화시 도면 딘진라네 나가진 도면세스 하고 송서 하 데네 다준들라 자이세 나바모도 상주나 나도 저가난데데 린지모도 토반주르스 어데 하고슬레 전화 대바마 줘버 송도스 어디 손에서
So the great ignorance of conceptuality makes us fall into the ocean of cyclic existence. Resting in non-conceptual stabilization, space-like non-conceptuality manifests clearly. When bodhisattvas non-conceptually contemplate, this excellent teaching will transcend conceptuality so hard to overcome and eventually reach the non-conceptual state. So here, the space-like non-conceptuality, resting in the stabilization, resting in the cognition of lack of true establishment of phenomena, resting in this. These ideas are found in the tantric texts, the space-like non-conceptuality, and so forth. The language in here we can find in the tantric texts. They had some questions, so we're going to reserve some time to make sure that that happens.
나도 말이 첨부 때 쿠이자수 동화시스 나도 춘나 대바 주반집이 된진데 나도 안에 대반집이 도바레스 로셰레스 도바 로셰레스 되게 주셔발라 되네 코알로 코도 거레스 동행용 거레스 나도 말이 첨부도 쿠이자수 동화시스 다디 네부 가르공고서나 도메 딘진 라네바 나가진 도메시스 춘나 대바 마루바 두벨 하동도 공바이나 데네 춘나 대바 주바 댄진데 네 댄진데 니야분도 그래서 어디 손데 인사래.
So the great ignorance of conceptuality. So here, this great ignorance is what creates our cyclic existence. So here it says makes us fall into the ocean of cyclic existence. So it's this ignorance, the grasping at true establishment, which causes us to fall into the ocean of cyclic existence. So what is the antidote to this problem? What is the antidote to the necessity to fall into the ocean of cyclic existence? The antidote is to rest in a non-conceptual stabilization. Space-like non-conceptuality manifests clearly. So if one has the special insight whose object of observation is emptiness, then this serves as an antidote. So the lack of true establishment, the cognition or understanding of the lack of true establishment of phenomena is what allows us to eradicate the great ignorance of conceptuality and eradicate then the rebirth into the ocean of cyclic existence.
Waji dat nakha jindu tume se nakha se put jandu nakha ngadu shad nakha roba yina bud play space tosa yo maru to ma ro da chino demba ma ru la dong goma yina an demba rubal to mar demba ruba meba seb thong ro se ajin sare
ya ju surana
nakha sha
nakha sha
chicken play space to yo maru to ma ro den ro do ro
hoya higher
토스는 된대로
higher
샤티
does not
어떤 나가 샤티는 도와요 말아 샤티 나갈 되면
birds flying in the sky
unobstructed space.
Right. But how does that connect? I don't understand. I'm having trouble with the translation of that.
토바메바 토스는 내려진 토로
Not able to. Okay.
샤티 나갈는 와 되는 도와면 도스는 로다 된나지 춘나 대바마 루베들 하동도 고바이나 안 대바 주발 토마 대바 주발 토아요 말 토바메바 대메 세부 동거스니
So the bird flying through the sky is unobstructed. I'm going to be a rough translation of this and move on because I'm not clear. So the bird flying through the sky is unobstructed, and in the same way that the lack of true establishment is not able to be penetrated or obstructed. It's not able to be penetrated because not obstructed, not hindered in any way. So I'm not clear on what this connection is. I really apologize, but we'll move on. The special insight, the understanding of the lack of true establishment of phenomena is unobstructed. Is not able to be penetrated in the same way that a bird cannot penetrate space. But I feel, okay, so we'll move on. Thank you.
어제 다든 다준들라 자유세 나바 모두 상주나 나도 저거 난데 린지 모두 토바주스 다준들라 자유세 나바 모두 상주나 나도 저거 난데 린지 모두 토바주스 당춘들라스 담비추 안에 산지게 안에 가서 담비추들라 자유세스나 상주세마 당춘들라 자유세 나바마도 상주나스 나브라마도 바추나 땡데레스 뎀바마루바레스 추나 뎀바마루바 산지게 송바레스 오데다비 산지게 송 추나 땡데 인자 안 뎀바마루바 안 상주세마 주게 공바이나 산루담바이나 안 나도 드바가와 댄진테 갈레 안에 본투그레스 닌사레 나도 드가 난데데 린지 모두 토반주스 안 돈이 세부 통바지 용거레스 닌사레
Then the Shanchu Samba Tony Selbo to Yongore Gang Sana Khensur the Nando maybe Gom Jagdue.
하동 공거 돈이 라동
Tony la maybe ha.
돈이 라면 하동 토소나 근데 셴네 다 돈이 라면 최종게 셔다 돈이도 비 제바 참마다 돈이 라면 비 최종게 셔다 돈이 라면 비 셴네다 돈이 라면 비 하동 속에 유 돈이 지버레스 돈이 통화 지버레스 이내 통준다고 말레스 하동도 돈이 세부시부 통고가레스 아니 돈이도 비 제바 참마다 셴네도 속에 돈이 통도 통고요 하는데 세부시부 통고 말레스 어떤 데서 되는 말이야
So when bodhisattvas non-conceptually contemplate this excellent teaching, they will transcend conceptuality so hard to overcome and eventually reach the non-conceptual state. So the bodhisattvas aim to, because the Buddha has propounded that it is necessary, aim to arrive at the understanding of emptiness in various ways. It will try to arrive at the understanding of the lack of true establishment of phenomena in various ways, through achieving the wisdom obtained through contemplation, and achieving an inferential prime cognition relative to this, achieving the contemplation stage, achieving the state of a wisdom arisen from contemplation, and also achieving calm abiding, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness, and special insight, which utilizes as its object of observation emptiness. So we can see that these are different things, but their object of observation, the object of observation of the shamatha, or calm abiding, and the inferential prime cognition that is arrived at are relative to the wisdom recognizing the lack of true establishment of phenomena. So the bodhisattva, recognizing that it's necessary to engage in these meditations in order to achieve his or her aim, needs to understand the wisdom, needs to achieve the wisdom realizing emptiness. So here, it's not as clear in the English that it needed to be explained, but in the Tibetan, Rinpoche gave commentary, because here it says, Damchu Dila Jelwe Tse, the conqueror's children is what it literally says in the Tibetan. And that does mean bodhisattva, but it was not literally translated in our English. So Rinpoche basically explained that the conqueror's children are bodhisattvas. But it's already been kind of explained to us by putting bodhisattvas in the English translation, but the Tibetan text does not say bodhisattvas. It says other word for bodhisattva, which is conqueror's children.
다 돈이 레미니 시내 공시내 시내 대하고 토소나 안내 하메비 네 도와치를 해야 유사리스 도와 돈이 레미 시내 토소나 안내 하메비 르던 셀지고 와요와리스 데네 돈이 레미 하동 토소나야 안 하메비 안내 도와 르셀 도와치고 와요와리스
Tambo the lusem dewa chambu yong
돈이 레미 시내 도두 야 도와치고 지용와리스 하동 도두 야 데레 라비 르셀 도와 용와요와리스.
Okay, so when one achieves calm abiding, whose object of observation is emptiness, then one will achieve bliss, or a state of happiness of the mind and of the body. And that's the first time. And then secondly, one will also achieve a greater level when he or she achieves special insight. A great bliss of the mind and the body will also be an experience that takes place. So
다시내다 라동 도들 레센 도와 치부 용화데 안네 셔바 나바 탄질 요바레마도 나바 장바 마레스 셔바 속에 시내다 라동 고네 안네 도와드 치바드 셔발레 요아레 나발레 요 토모레스.
So this is something that is in common. It's not exclusive to the Buddhist tradition. We can find calm abiding and special insight and the great happiness or great bliss that's achieved through these in non-Buddhist traditions. This is not an exclusive practice to the Buddhist tradition. This is something that we have in common with other religions, other sects or practices.
then 가시게 되네 시내들 하동고네 도와드 제용도 데세면도 딩아제 제용도 오 당아 조린 투송스하게 조린 레송스 트네 녀주르게 워들 몸 좀 버렸대
Zurim, Gorim,
Jirin
Zorim. Okay, Jirim, Zorim, completion. So that there are those who achieve this state of great bliss after the calm abiding and special insight, and mistakenly believe that they are on the completion stage. They believe that this great bliss has allowed them to achieve completion stage mistakenly. There are those who have believed this.
What the Lari Chama, the December to be thing as a Zurin Labors, to watch in car, they are to what they no training was at this.
So the Lama Tsongkhapa, the great master Lama Tsongkhapa, in the great exposition on the stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lam Rinpoche, points out for those who state that this level of happiness is the actual completion stage, here is the clarification of that mistaken idea. Then the Lama Tsongkhapa, the Shanchu Landun, Nala.
Larin Chamo, Larin Chamo, Dojo Mobu, what didn't the Katu is there?
So in the Lam Rinpoche, there's a much more expansive explanation of this, and we've arrived at the condensed section of it here, but in the Lam Rinpoche, there's more expanded explanation of this.
What that do you know?
So if folks have questions, please, I know that we've advertised that there's a short meditation. We've been just doing teaching, and so if folks would like to ask questions, this is a very precious time that we'll be able to do that. So please don't be shy, and there's no question that is silly or anything like that, because we were all brand new at some point in time.
John, question.
Yes, John.
So non-conceptual emptiness, or non-conceptual emptiness, is that the same as direct perception of emptiness?
Tonla goes at that when you go to Gurwa. Now to maybe things as in doors. Now to members. Now to members there, and Goa Mamudu was. Mosung Koyado. Don't you Mosung to Tonla, Gola, Mulula, two men rent to but the Tishima Church of two men and Digua. Yant Nema not to members there, they are the Casagure. Mosung Mebaje. And then Jeba Jene, Jeba Majeba Jin, Tony Le, do Santan Javatan, 2 months, she has Beju as a
Then
Londa Riba let them Tony Santan, Chuna de Bama Rubare, Chuna de Bama Ruba, Sanjig Sumbare, Chuna de Bama Rua, the Tendi in Beja, Jusen Santan, then Jusen on the Matavaje, and Tagaran, Jeba Maju, Tony Santan, Matuba Gumbas, Pidgit the jeans on
So there are, in answer to your question, there are definitely non-conceptual realization. There's a non-conceptual realization of emptiness on the path of seeing, which is the direct perception. So, but the direct perception itself, which is a non-conceptual direct perception, also takes place at various other times in the path of seeing, the path of the uninterrupted paths of the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no learning. So the uninterrupted paths of these are non-conceptual states of real direct perception, new incontrovertible knower, which is free from conceptuality. These are incontrovertible and free from conceptuality is the definition of a direct prime cognition. So any direct prime cognition is necessarily a non-conceptual cognition because the definition of direct prime cognition within it states that it is free from conceptuality. This can be achieved when one has a direct perception, but that's achieved relying upon the syllogism and reason and so forth, and saying things are not truly established because they dependently originate, and thinking of various different reasons and so forth to arrive at a state of inferential prime cognition based on a sign. So arriving at inferential prime cognition will then allow one to arrive at then the direct prime cognitions. And Jepa Tsema, nando mepa.
제바 참 나도 매바세 베지 사마로 그 제바 시도 거로 다지 시네 댄데 임베 주센라 때네 그 상당로 거로
So the Jpagasama, the inferential prime cognition, is conceptual because you have to think of reasons. You have to say that phenomena are not truly established and then give the reason that they dependently originate. So this inferential prime cognition we can't say is non-conceptual because one relies upon conceptual thought to arrive at inference.
그지
So did that answer your question?
댄데 젠터지 ку 좋아요 오케이 유
So Rinpoche, thank you for your teaching.
Rinpoche, the Chenrezig Songchen Tu Chena.
야
Before I ask my question, we also brought a colleague of mine, Professor William Johnston, who is chairman of history at Wesleyan, and a specialist in Asian studies.
Oh, excellent.
He and I studied with the same master in New York State. So this is Professor Johnston to your
Sir, they call him the Labdra Chembugi again.
고르베
The Asia, the Labdra Chembo, Asian Zendra, Lagadu.
tinju Ozel College
Wesleyan College, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The Kongi Trobo, Konsegadu.
야 tinju 야 그 가르사 도와
So, did you have a question?
Yeah, of course. So as we talked yesterday, in the Zen tradition, there is much in common with the Tibetan tradition. Maybe we should take little bites because when we talked yesterday, I think I talked too much. And so you said you took water. And so we experience, or our training experiences this thing with the bird, which is not abiding. The mind does not abide any place. It's not. We see that it's not fixed, and that liberates the mind at any moment to be free to respond to the world. So this we have in common. Maybe could you translate that? And then my question.
I want to just make sure that I'm really clear with the language that I use for these questions. It's always really important to me. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear and concise about the question that I asked Rinpoche. So the commonality, is the question, the commonality between Zen, is the commonality between Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism that we both recognize that at any moment one can be liberated through a non-conceptual, I just want to make sure I'm clear on your question.
I think this is just establishing a commonality for my question, because I want to ask him about a higher teaching. But something that I think is common is that we train to experience non-attachment, or seeing that phenomena are not grounded in a particular thing. Everything usually arises. And that is what, when you were struggling with that concept of the bird and he was hitting the desk or the podium, is that experience itself is liberating. That creates liberation of the mind. It is liberation of the mind. It's not, but for us it's an experience. It's something we train in that particular discipline. And the reason we're here, the thing I'm interested in is that there are further teachings beyond that. We have this in common, but the Tibetan tradition has more. And I'm interested in asking about them more. So first I wanted to just establish we have this common thing. We do this together, we all know this. And then I wanted to ask about something else.
Zen the Pupichu, Pupinapichu, Drapudu, Tumo Mambo Yure, then Khensur the Gonjana, then Dopa, then Mepa, the Gabudu, then Pupi Napi Chu, then Zen Chu, Drapudu, the Sam, the Gom, Kashe, then Drapudu. Okay, then Kon Triwa, you're right. Kon Segadu, Tambo, Kon de Lagu, then a Triwa Jagare. Zen, Pupi Napi Chu, Drapudu. Okay, so yeah, please. I told them that there were commonalities between the Zen, and so just.
So after one attains the ability to be free of our tradition, we then return to compassionate work with others. That I suppose we would say our completion stage is never to be complete, because we then return to the marketplace, we return to worldly life, and we try to help others through works of compassion. And I'm interested in knowing, because the Tibetan, what I feel from Tibetan practitioners is very strong compassionate practice. And so I wonder whether in the completion stage in the Tibetan tradition, it is similar, that one then returns to others, or perhaps there are higher states of realization that I'm just not personally
Okay,
aware
so
of.
are you speaking completion stage of the practice or of actually being a Buddha? So like being a fully enlightened Buddha, or the completion stage practice relative to highest yoga tantra? Is that, I really want to formulate an actual question.
When we spoke yesterday, I think we established that the Chan tradition was not transmitted this final tantra. So that was an interesting thing to learn. And in some ways I'm asking, what is that tantra, of course, but really what I'm saying is that for us, our highest practice, after one realizes the way, we would say, after one has achieved some level of realization.
Like of emptiness, or?
Beyond emptiness. It's a working, this is where it gets tough. It's
Right.
a working realization of what this life is, which I think is what we're all talking about. So after one attains that, one's purpose for life, then, what comes out of your heart, is to try to give to others. And so I wonder whether the completion stage in Tibetan Buddhism is about that journey from personal realization to helping others.
Okay, so as an ordinary being, non-Buddha, as a non-Buddha who's achieved realizations, but maybe is not a Buddha yet, do they come back once they've had non-conceptual realization to help others, love and compassion? Would that be?
Yeah, see, the problem in the Zen tradition is we kind of feel like we're all the Buddha, but we are more or less realized. You know, and so the work is to realize what you inherently are. Once we've done that, we want to help other people realize what they inherently are, which is the Buddha. And so we try to train, at the end of our formal training, we then try to train to help others. And I wonder, does that help? Am I getting across?
I'm going to take a shot at it and see where we get to, and then we'll go from there. Then kongi the true then kongi the Zen the best way to put this. Zen tanda ngatsu tamche sanje imba. Tanda ngatsu sanje yene ngatsu hakogomare. Tanda ngatsu hakogomare yene tanda ngatsu sanje imba. Dene pupe chu. Then Jerim, Gorim, Lena. Then Ninji Dan Shamba, K Champo Dua. The Majenda Rinpoche, K Champo Dua. The Pupa Napichu, Kongi Chua, the K Champo Rebe. Ninji Dan Shamba, Jerim, Gorim, Tama, Ninji Dan Shamba, K Champo Dua. The Geshe Lharampa con Nyuma Lason, yene kon Sanjay K lens tanda ngatsu ket the Sanjay Yimba yene the Barche yere Barche Geshe yere Barche mena then ngatsu Sanjay Yimba hakodu yene tanda ngatsu hakogomare then konso de K langadu.
What this sonsa yuares Nyama bamu the K langadu. Mari tobi ongu koa chang riba rangmashin tribates thoma meban sanjig ri yoro sanjig ri budan neche thoma meban ngasul yodrwa thoma meban sen deba ma ruba de sen thoma meban yodrwa sanjig ri thoma meban yorwa sanjig ri de senjen thanjil yorwa
Less so.
What sanjig ri yodang ngasul nga sanjig islawa ina what la yuares
Less so.
What then she is shaking yours there.
Less so.
This Hanjig read the Lord was
Less so.
Sanjig read. And Tangazu de Umabana to Sogi de Tanangazu Sanji is the Logma. Sanjig read you love this. Sanjig read. Sanji or Nuba yours.
So first of all, going to the us being realized or not being realized part, and then we'll go to the next. Rinpoche stated that in the Nyingma tradition, you'll also find ideas that we are already liberated, that we're currently liberated, but we don't necessarily realize it, and that once certain things or misknowing is removed, then one realizes they are an actual Buddha already. So this idea can also be found within Nyingma tradition and so forth. What was stated, and according to the Madhyamika view, is that we have Buddha potential or Buddha nature, that since beginningless time we have possessed this mental consciousness, this continuum that has been beginningless, and it dependently originates, so it is not truly established. And because it is not truly established, it has Buddha potential. It has what is called Chenrezig, or Buddha nature or Buddha lineage. These are three different translations for the same thing. But in Madhyamika, we would not say that we are currently Buddhas, that we are already Buddhas. We would state that we are not Buddhas at this point, and that we have Buddha nature, or the potential or ability to become a Buddha, because of the lack of true establishment of our mental consciousness. So that's one part of that.
Das senje tanjil ju sanje ri yue zang and sanje yuar sonsa yue sares dendel jesun dan ne an kaji ge senje tanjil ju lo sanje yuares danda sanje nga zong she go ma sanje yuares ko zom baba she ba na jins nyomo ba si de kale kale se on du sanje na lo de ngores wadna
su ke langu
da de ken la su lo go da na lo sanje yuares and nyomo bon le bon shiri bon de sanje re ngores
Vene,
su
ke langu.
Danda khos ndabu marbe ndabu
Gine uma ke langu mar.
Uma ke langu gulu ba. Okay. Nyama ba moje ke lemme mishiste.
So there's this other idea that there is a Buddha in not in the Galupa Madhyamika tradition, but other traditions also, which I feel is similar to that pronouncement, that there is an actual Buddha inside here somewhere, and that it is covered up in some way by the afflictions and the obstructions to omniscience and all of these things. And once they are slowly removed, then the Buddha that is there already is recognized. This would not be according to the Madhyamika tradition or the Galup tradition, but maybe some Nyingma traditions we've seen this present in, and so I've seen this idea before.
But
if we look at Nyingma Dharma and we look at Galupa Dharma, if the person is really a scholar, there will be no difference between the two. So if one is a scholar, one will not see any difference whatsoever in the Nyingma tradition, the Kagyu tradition, the Sakya tradition, or the Galupa tradition, if one is truly a scholar. So all of the schools state they are Madhyamika Prasangika. I don't know how they are practitioners of the Madhyamika Prasangika, the middle way consequent school. The Nyingmas say that they are the middle way consequentialists. The Sakyas say they hold the middle way consequentialist view, and the Kagyus say they hold the middle way consequence view, and the Galupa state that they hold the middle way consequence view, the Madhyamika Prasangika view, the highest view of the tenet systems. So there's no difference, it's similar. Jain, or Zen. So I think that the Zen tradition sounds very similar to the mind-only school, the Chittamantran school's view.
안 추억 걸로 천년 송 되는 거래서 영화서는 뒤지기 줄이 뒤지다 영화 되지 영화
Sopoyomayaram.
영화서야 된 뒤질러 뒤지 걸로 영화로 그래 용주선 돈이라 그래 돈이지 그다서 근데 돈이 많이 비따바다 안에 매박이 레본라서부터 그다라 그래 천년 송 어디서
Sopoyomayaram. The Samsampi Dawa Tseni.
산삼비 천년 송
Lenche Dan Konta.
되는 말이
Kakre.
추억 걸로 뒤는 송 되는 그래 영화 용주 그다스
I forgot
뒤지
this. I
이나
noticed too.
영화이 미쳐 영화던 뒤지 되지레스
The Samsampin view the three different.
Three natures, three characteristics.
Okay, you have it, please.
The characteristic of being other-powered Shinwon,
Mhm.
the characteristic of being completely established Yongzhu, and the characteristic of Kunta, thoroughly imputed phenomena. So these, the thoroughly imputed Kunta refers to these things which don't exist, like the horns of a rabbit and so forth. Shinwon refers to its interdependent nature, and Yongzhu, it refers to the emptiness, not being established.
Exactly.
어떤 데지 시에는 근데 세상 방향 그 따와자요와
And so this is a sort of view that the mind-only school proposes.
오마바도 된다고 말했어.
It's not so similar to the
남바 상집이 조다마 이제데 남바 상집이 지바레스 시자마와 도도바 세상 방 오마바 남바 상집이 지바레 양 이나야 나로래 돈이 그때 뭐라요레스.
So when we look at the four different tenet systems in the Buddhism, we look at Vibhashika, the Great Exposition School. We look at the Sutra School, the Sautrantika School. We look at the Chittamantran School, the Mind-Only School. And we look at the Madhyamika School, the Middle Way School. We look at these four different tenet systems. We do say, yes, they are all Buddhist tenets, but their understanding of emptiness is a little bit different, or their assertions about emptiness are a little bit different.
출루서 나루 때문에 못한도스 이슈 나루래 이슈 카탈레스야 얘다 때문에 못한도스.
We can even see in other religions that there's different divisions of those religions. For instance, Christians, we see Catholic and different kinds of Christianity.
되네 맞을 같이 나루래 못한도스.
And there's many different sects of the Muslim tradition.
되나지 남바 조다마 제요아스 남바 지바르스 나루를 때문에 요아스.
So the Buddhists, we say there are four tenets, but they are all proponents of each system are considered Buddhists. There just might be some differences.
어떤데 몸부 요아스.
So there are many in there.
다 현재다 샴바도서 공야도 상지기시다 개체부인 송바레스로와 아니 상지 고본 토발라 다시 주바니 고가레스 주바니 대고 용고야 가르스나 질 덴바니 초초 랑 다시니 아니 메드여서 레벨레 최소군이 어디시도 말바 이제 덴바니 초초들바 랑 다시니 레벨군이 최고도서고 어때 어떠송도 말봐 단 제부 주고도 토발라 되네 메테요 송도 내봐도 그거레스 돈이도 비 싫어고 그래 돈주도 비 싫어 장배 사제 두고 말해 근데 샤주 생로 장고 그래서 샤주 생 장바가 사제 두고 말해 돈이도 비 싫어로 장고 그래 니가 그거레스 샤디지 자주 버려도 로라 주바니 고도 와서 된다지레스 말봐
Umajuba.
야 우마주바.
So we can find a quote. Going to the question about the love and compassion, we can find a quote in the Madhyamika Avatara, Chandakirti's entrance to the Middle Way. We can find a quote that states that the golden goose, in order for the golden goose to fly over the great ocean, it's necessary to have the wings of method and wisdom, or the two wings of method and wisdom. Or like the golden goose, it's necessary for the bodhisattva, this is a rough translation, to have like the golden goose who needs the two wings to fly over the great ocean, the bodhisattva must have the two wings of method and wisdom in order to go to the other side. So here, one must, love and compassion are indispensable on the path throughout its entirety. it's not possible to achieve the final state or Buddhahood without having the combination of method and wisdom. Method being the love and compassion, and wisdom being wisdom spoken of before. So it's not possible for one to achieve the final aim without the combination of these two things. In order for one to have the Demba Ni, the guy, this one quote. So Demba Ni Tambo.
ane medina yoson le waris medina yoson yalan jebal den rebo chugo do zugule.
So if one arrives at the two truths, then one will arrive at the two, method and wisdom. And through method and wisdom, one can achieve the two bodies of the Buddha, the form body and the Dharma body, the truth body. So the form body and the truth body can be formed through the two of method and wisdom. Go ahead.
So this is a presentation of base being the two truths, method being method and wisdom, and fruit being the two bodies, base, path, and fruit.
Did everyone hear that?
This is a presentation of base, path, and fruit. Base being the first two things, the two truths, method being path being method and wisdom, and fruit being the two bodies.
So in the two bodies being the form body and the truth body. The Dharmakaya and the Robokaya.
다 사지근도 로서 도송도 최 단계 나바 단계도 ngo바도 상자와 되베 싫어지 바로도 심을 써보셔우스 최 단계 나바 단계도 ngo바도 상자와 되베 송도 대전 세제 줄이나 상제 고봉도야 되버요로 샤주 sen 줄이나 상제 고봉도야 되버요로스 안에 샤주 sen 줄이나 상제 고봉도 되버요 바장지 상제 고봉용 말다스 상제 고봉도발라 안에 사제고문 두번 대비사 주고 센당 돈이 두비 싫어 니자냐래 지고 그래서 최단지 나바타지는 뭐바도 사자와 대비 싫어지 바로도 심을 넣어보자고 돈이 넣어자고 그래서.
So it's not possible for one to achieve the state of Buddhahood solely by relying upon the mind that aspires to enlightenment. It's necessary to combine that mind that aspires to enlightenment with the wisdom realizing emptiness. So both of these things are indispensable on the path to Buddhahood, because neither one can be left out if one wishes to achieve his or her aim. And my brain is mush. Do you have the transmission? You don't? Okay. By this time, my brain stops working. Tanda chirang the chu mambo shisang the nge sam. Selboyo mari tanda. Kangi sene the Chutsu League. Chidan cheka. Chikshene chirang Khensur Pema Jetsu. Rinpoche tells stories of his teacher, Khensur Pema Jetsun, and I just said maybe you're Khensur Pema Jetsun, that and he said, I'm very small and I don't understand. He was being humble, but his teacher would teach for the Chutsu Gatsudu, the Sansan Khensur Pema Jetsun. Chutsu So he would be teaching sometimes for 5 hours straight. His teacher would teach, and Rinpoche used to tell me he didn't go up to go to the bathroom, he didn't get up to do anything. He would teach for 5 hours straight. So he always tells me that story when after a half an hour I'm looking at the clock and asking if we should maybe have some tea. So anyway, did that answer some of the questions? Just when we get into some of the more difficult things, Rinpoche has to eat at 12 and it's 10 of. So we got, just real quickly, we got to the compassion. It's indispensable on the path at the beginning, middle, and end. It's necessary to have compassion in the completion stage, Rinpoche said, up to the end. And the Buddha nature is different than that we are actually a Buddha, and it's covered by these things. It's actually more of a potential to become, in our tradition, as opposed to an actual presence, actual presence. So those are the two things that we got straightened out.
So, in addition to saying thank you, I have two things. One would be that in the Zen practice, I think you said that a scholar would understand that these are all in fact one tradition. And I think in Zen practice, we would say to a practitioner, someone who practices, we would see that these are all one. This is all one body. This is all one dharma.
The Chiron, the Sumpare, the Kepa, Chu Tamche, Tsampa, Chipa. Then Kon Tsampa, Zen, Nyam Lenpa, Tamche, the Chipa. Nyam Lenpa. So you would say that all practitioners, I just want to get So is the Zen view, Rinpoche has a question for you. Is the Zen, in the 4 tenet systems taught by Buddha, which of the tenet system is the Zen tradition? Is it the Madhyamika tenet? Is it the Chittamantran tenet? Is it the Satrantika tenet? Or is it the Vaibhashika tenet?
Dr. Johnston.
No mas.
Hakogame.
Or the comment.
So you're not able to answer.
Yes, I'm not able to answer, but I will return with
Okay.
Okay. And the reason is our practice is intended to be, it's a very particular practice. It's called the direct pointing to the human mind outside words and letters, outside the scripture. It's meant to verify the scripture, but it's not necessarily, it's not arrived at the same way. It's arrived at, that's why it's called direct pointing or direct focus.
The Rinpoche Chiran Sumpare, the Ngama, the Kepa Tamche, Tsampa Chu Tamche Chipa, Konsa, so the Zen Ken Tsampa, then Nyam Len Ken Tamche Tsampa, Chu Tamche Chipa. Gangen Sena Nyam Len Ken, the Nyam Len, then Chena, then Dopa Yondu, then Dopa. Nampi Chu Dana, then the Datare, Gangen Sena Nyam Len Dang, the Becha Chipare. So yes, it's similar. I explained the verification of the scripture through the practice, the realization of the practice. And Rinpoche said that's similar. Zengi. It's nice to have these questions because I have a desire to know more about the Zen tradition. So it's nice to hear these things.
Yeah.
Can we return then? Because I would like as a person, as a practitioner, to ask for a particular practice from the Tibetan tradition that I could start to study myself. And as I said yesterday, I have 25 years in my tradition, so I'm not leaving my tradition.
Right.
But I'm very interested in perhaps learning as a very inadequate person, right, very humbly, just to learn some small Tibetan practice that I can use.
Kon the Zen lo nishu sanga lo jun shesun. Then kon Zen yushu ma yene kon gi tsampa chi shen de nampi chu the pupi nampi chu pentodu den sun san kon yodu. Then kon gom lo jun she go ga pupi nampi chu gom lo jun she go gang sena chi shen kon gi zengi nyang and pentodu. So this is great because Zen is Buddhism, and this is the same because this is Buddhism. So is the Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese Dharma are all very similar, no? The same, no?
Japan, Korea,
So I think that from China sprung the traditions in these other countries. And it's very similar to this.
So could I return, because I don't want to take everyone's time, his recommendation of a Tibetan teaching that would be useful in my practice.
Okay, now Rinpoche, the Gemma kon yongu, then Gangyasuna kon Becha gare yabudu kon the lo gare pantodu Becha gare. The Becha tuntun Gangyasuna kon the laso.
Baja tudung da chu gabu na da nga su chu su ne de ya de lön de ju ju ma. Wo den de jang ge ni abres de lang zhong de da ga den du yores. De le de je be ina lang ri du den de ya jures ya bu yores. Den ro sun lang ri din lang ri chembo. De ne sa ji de jaga ke ba su kwa jin yores.
So, just quickly, helpful texts, if you want to start with something abbreviated, you can start with something small. I'll tell you after when I run through them. The Source of All My Good, or The Foundation of All Good Qualities by Lama Tsongkhapa. And you can read that because that contains all of the meaning of the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that we've been going over in a condensed format. Once you become comfortable with that, you could possibly move on to a text called The Abbreviated Stages of the Path by Lama Tsongkhapa, which is a little bit larger version of the Lamrim with more stanzas. Once you're comfortable with that, you could possibly then approach the medium stages of the Path to Enlightenment up to the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa. And just a translator's note, the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment is translated. It's a complete overview of the Gelugpa tradition, written by Lama Tsongkhapa, and it's 3 volumes right now. It's in English.
Oh, this is on that important.
And this is very important to understand.
Yeah.
Thank you for your teaching.
Tu Chena.
Yeah.
Okay.
Da nga zu ji
Okay, so we didn't do a dedication, so we need to do the dedication prayer, and then we have some items on the altar from Losar, the blessed items, and we can hand those out. It's the best part of the teaching, all the cookies and everything. That's when I wake right up. Everything becomes so clear at that moment. So, Tamche, Tamche la.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just do the Tibetan transliteration and at the end, beginning with the outer mandala offering, concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Is that what it says? Yes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Gam Niratayami. Nyambe Babu Jeda Jen Padang Gondu Sambo Deyan Dejinte Deda Konji Jesu Dalochi Kewa Deda Tanje Radu Ngondu Zom Jebe Gewa Tanje Ji Ngawa Gala Chudu Ngapa De Dajen Gewe Tsawa De Kunya Sambo Chuchi Radu Ngawa Nyi Ngamri Rawe Ngowe Jinyan He Vendane Wa Malu Nyom Wene Chenrezig Wan Tenzin Yan Zoyi Jamais idebanu nyoni. Lo zun zambo yun yin nang ala. Yun rin jamban zi ming yi wei shin. Lo nan dom bin yin ba zin je ma. Yin su wan da rin jin jian nin yo. Lo ru nye zhung mun ba tse. Ga be go zum dong dan ju zin. Dan yu zun jun yu zum da run yin. Geshe